As someone who grew up with LPs, records, cassette tapes, those old analog formats pre-compact disc, and then of course through the compact disc and today with modern streaming, I often forget that a lot of people that are buying turntables today have never owned one before. They've never used a turntable in many cases. You may ask, well, so what does that matter? It's like, well, there are some things that if you grew up in an age using turntables, playing records, that, we take for granted, and a lot of people get caught out. I'm bringing this up because we had a comment to one of our videos just the other day, and I was trying to help troubleshoot why the output level was so low. This person has a pair of speakers rated for 100 watts maximum, and I think their amplifier was also 85 watts or 100 watts a channel, and they were cranking it up, and they said, can you help me out, figure out why the volume level is so low? I mean, I've got an amplifier that should be able to power these speakers with no problem, and yet the output is very, very low. I asked to, check the usual things, maybe try another set of speakers or another amplifier or something like that, and the response that came back was, thanks, I figured it out. We had our turntable plugged into a regular input. I guess because this new amplifier didn't have an input, a phono input. What I'm trying to point out here is the fact that obviously this is probably someone who hasn't had a turntable before, and it's a new acquisition. And you have to remember a couple of things about turntables. No matter what type of cartridge, whether it's a moving magnet or moving coil, they produce far less signal output level than a typical line level component like a compact disc player, a Blu-ray player, cassette deck, a streamer box, whatever. Those units, those line level units for consumer products have a reference level or a maximum level of 2 volts. Now, when you're talking about phono cartridges, we start talking about numbers that are in the thousandths of a volt or millionth of a volt. Some moving coil cartridges have, some level of microvolts or millions of a volt of output. To get any output out of a turntable, you need to have an input stage, usually called a phono stage or a phono input, that has far more amplification than your CD input or your auxiliary input on an amplifier or an AVR or whatever. And this is important. This is why the level, when this person tried, plugged their turntable into a regular, maybe a CD input, why the level was so low. There's another thing that we need to remember is that the sound would be horrible. Even if the level, you could tolerate the very, very low output level, you need equalization. We need something called RIAA EQ applied. This is a complex EQ curve that has a huge boost in bass frequencies, which we don't actually cut into the LP because the cartridge would never be able to track it. So the bass is heavily rolled off and the treble is heavily boosted when the LP is cut, is manufactured. And then we do the inverse to that when we play it back. So remember, if you're new to turntables, you're buying your first turntable, you need to make sure that either the turntable has a built-in phono stage, and many of them do, many very decent ones do. There's a new Technics model, I think the 1500C, that has a very, very good phono stage built into it, which is great. Or you need an AVR, an integrated amp, a preamp that has a dedicated phono input, again, for the type of cartridge you need as well. So moving magnet or moving coil, make sure that it's compatible. The final option, if you have an amplifier that doesn't have a phono input, you can always buy an external phono stage. There's many, many of them on the market, ranging from $50 to $50,000. But just remember that you can't plug your turntable into a normal input on a preamp or an AVR. I hope that was interesting, and As always, keep those comments coming. They are what fuels the topics for these videos. Thanks for watching.